Well, travel writer Debbie Stone came back from her Africa trip where she explored Cape Town, South Africa, Chobe National Park, Victoria Falls, Namibia, and apparently also Etosha, Japan. You can see most of these stories on Cape Town, Chobe National Park, Victoria Falls, and Namibia if you go to nationalparktraveling.com, and they're featured in Parks and Travel magazine as well. And she's joining Nancy and I here on Big Blend Radio today. This is like our nature connection / vacation station show because it's all about her trip into the sand dunes.
Awesome.
In Namibia, one of the world's oldest desert.
I wonder if you can slide down it.
Apparently, well, you can. I read her article, and you can. You can do things. And
cool.
There's snakes to check out, all kinds of interesting spidery things, and really cool little critters and plants. So she's going to tell us about this. Very exciting. And also this article will be featured in the spring-summer issue of Parks and Travel magazine. That is the 2019 issue. And all of it, again, is right up if you go to nationalparktraveling.com. And you'll see our articles there. And also check her out in blendradioandtv.com. Her articles around the world from Austria to Mexico to Newfoundland, Canada. I still can't say it. And today I'm not going to be able to pronounce anything either. So, but welcome back to the show, Debbie Fire Monkey. Welcome. How are you?
Oh well, hey there, ladies. I'm doing very well, and you?
Well, we're doing good. We're getting excited because these Africa stories are so near and dear to our hearts, and this is an area that we didn't really get to explore when we lived in South Africa. We did cross over into Namibia when we were in the Kalahari Desert, which is epic, and I'm just saying, when you go back, because I know you're going to end up going back, but there's something about Africa, and I love this. You were on the show recently talking about Chobe and, the Big Five and seeing leopard and elephants.
Right.
And, this time you're talking about this other side that is something that people do shy away from, but there's a lot of us who do get intrigued by the desert and the little things that you can see.
Correct. And, I didn't really know that, when I was doing my story in Chobe, I think I mentioned talked about the ugly five, the big five and the ugly five. And then there is the little five of the Namib Desert. And these are specific to this particular place or this location, and they are the lizard, the snake, the gecko, the chameleon, and the spider. And these are the tiny things that a lot of people either ignore because they're oblivious to them, or they just maybe they're just not fond of the little creatures, and think that they're less photogenic than the star-studded big guys of the big five. But I found these type of creatures to be really fascinating in their own right, and especially if you have a guide that takes the time to really explain about the behavior and the characteristics of each of the creatures and how they how they adapt to this type of arid environment.
And these dunes are so just this red, and I remember like the red clay of Africa, in Kenya and in certain parts of South Africa. But this is like, here's the powder. I mean, and you, what happens when it rains? You know what I mean? It's like here's the red mud pool. But
they receive so little rain there. Namibia is such a desert. Arid climate, and I think it gets only like a half of an inch of rainfall a year, and you get very hot temperatures, over 100 degrees, and these creatures and these plants have learned, they adapt to this type of environment, and to me it's amazing the types of adaptations they've made to be able to survive,
Going from where you live in Santa Fe, and you know the desert land too here in Tucson, and I know you've traveled so many places. Was this different than like being in Santa Fe in the high desert? Did you find similarities? I should say actually different, but any similarities?
High desert is so different because there's a lot of stuff that grows in high desert. We have mountains up here, and in high desert, we get snow and, all sorts of cold weather. Right now it's winter here, and we had snow falling just yesterday. So it's really a different environment altogether. I know maybe by you, Tucson and that whole area, that's definitely more, I would think, in line with maybe what you might find in Namibia in terms of the type of climate and geography kind of thing. But I found this to be this is really such a kind of sparse landscape in so many ways, and it's very stark. It's beautiful in this very stark beauty way.
And what about those dead trees? We watched a thing. It was Tales of the Light. I don't know if I'm getting the documentary series. It's done out of Australia, National Geographic, of these filmmakers and photographers that travel the world, and everyone had just Google Tales of the Light. It's Tales from the Light or something like that. But it's I remember this one photographer. He went from being a war photographer and photographing people being blown up to getting out to places, and I recognized it from your photos, and that one area he went there where there's all these dead trees, and this is really bizarre that they're not kind of reminds me of the Salton Sea out in Southern California, and sometimes we'll go to an area, even in the Colorado River area, where it's dried up, and it's sad, and you'll see these trees out there, but it doesn't take long for them to go, and this is where you were, these trees just sticking up out of the desert, but they're dead. But how do they even survive that way? It's bizarre.
Yeah, that's a good question about that. But I know when we were, especially in the salt pans, and you see these skeleton trees, they call them the camel thorn trees, I believe, and they're just sticking up out of there. And to me, it's how are they still standing? And and is it 20 years from now or 40 years from now, are they completely going to be gone? Or do they just manage to stay that way? I don't know. But it's just kind of it's there's an eerie quality to those trees. It's kind of just, to me, it's just you see them sticking up out of the salt pan or out of the desert, and you're just what you're like. But everything that is actually alive, requires so little moisture. From the creatures to the plants, they require very, very little moisture, and in the especially in this environment that gets so little water that they have to adapt to that, and they have to
you were talking about in your article that one of the lizards that you saw out there, we do have to talk about the cartwheeling spider, but the one, I think it's the palmetto gecko. The one, is that the one that's all colorful and but actually
yes.
The skin, it helps it on, they're all into camouflage, but their eyeballs help them with keep moisturized.
They capture any type of moisture that might come in through the fog, basically, and so the fog has moisture, and so they will capture it from the fog, and they're these lidless eyes, and they get the moisture, which they'll then lick off with their tongue, to drink, and that's the gecko, this nocturnal creature. They burrow underneath the sand, and then they have these web type feet, and they're really good diggers in the holes that they go into, and their feet have these pads on them, and they are really, really fast, and they go up those dunes just really, really quickly, a lot quicker than I could do, I can tell you that much.
Wow.
And they're just they're fascinating, but you have to catch them quickly, because they're just so quick.
So they poke themselves in the eye.
Yeah. They lick their eyeballs.
Oh, with their tongue. They just their tongue gets up, and they get the moisture from that way, which is a very unique adaptation.
Yeah, and that's so cool that you get to experience and see this. And I think that's what I was saying. A lot of people would not think, no, you're going to go out and look at a lizard, but they're so cool. And when you see lizards in the desert, I mean, they all have these amazing colors. We go out between Yuma and Tucson, out by Gila Bend. There's a petroglyph site, the Painted Rock Petroglyph site, and not only is it just this historic corridor of like, the Wampatisa expedition, the Mormon battalion went through there, the Butterfield Overland Mail Route. I mean, it's just this hub of, this is this crossroads, and then the Hohokams did all these petroglyphs on these rocks, and this is a place to go if you're into lizards and chuckwallas. They're all there. There's like, they hang out on the rocks. They're like, look at me. This is my rock. Yeah. This is my petroglyph. And,
and they're
people that are into this go there just to see all the lizards that come out and hang out on those rocks. That's the thing.
And I think that, it's the little creatures. First of all, you have to know where to look, how to find them, you have to be a tracker, but a tracker of these tiny little creatures. And so you really have to have eagle eyes. I mean, our guide had just eagle eyes. It's like, we'd be in the Jeep and we'd be going along, and all of a sudden he'd just like brake really hard, and then he'd be like run out up to the dune, stick his hand in the sand, but pull it out, and there'd be like, there's a skink, and it's like, oh my gosh, we're like, it's amazing that they've trained. Of course, they've been training and they live out there and they know what to look for. But a tourist or traveler or visitor coming, you'd never see these creatures. You just wouldn't.
Well, you always go with tour companies. I know, like in Bhutan and Bhutan, I should say Bhutan, and you've done this even on the hiking things in Appalachia. You've got into that. Hey, take a guide because you'll see stuff. As travel writers, we often do that because that's how we're going to get our story. If you go out there wandering the desert, you're going to die, man. But I want to talk about this.
Well, you certainly wouldn't find anything. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's smart because especially when you go into these kinds of environments, to go with someone who knows what you're looking at. Don't step on the sidewinder because they're buried in the sand. So. This company is Batis Birding Company that you went to, so it's Batis, Batis Birding Company. So it's birds and lizards, and so they kind of do it all.
Yeah, and they have specialized birding tours for people who are birders, and then they have this wonderful, what I did was a living desert safari, and that was specifically to look for the little five, look for the creatures that are, and the plants that are there. And like you said, it's just, to me, it's I want to learn about something from somebody who actually has real knowledge about the area or the place or the history or whatever. And yes, you can read and learn too, but it's so much more interesting and fascinating to hear from somebody who actually, lives in that place and has grown up with that and can give you, all the extras and make it vivid and colorful. And so, I try to take these types of tours, whether it's a half day or day tour or whatever it is, or multi-day, because you walk away with so much more.
The one thing you saw was a Namaqua chameleon. Cool. And this is interesting to me, the word Namaqua.
Yeah.
In South Africa, and so very close to the border of Namibia, northwest Africa. Yes, I do know my direction. Yep, northwest is an area called Namaqua land.
Oh, it's beautiful.
So it's the same spelling.
Yep, same
as
spelling.
Namaqua. And this area, like, seriously, now when you go back to South Africa, because I know you will at some point, Debbie, you got to go when they have their wildflower bloom. It's like when our deserts go out here, go crazy. We experienced that, and I mean, it's carpets and just thick with flowers and all these, South African desert flowers, and it's just mind-blowing. I mean, it happens in our deserts too. But if you get to experience, that's interesting. So I think it's interesting, the name. I was reading that going, wow.
the chameleon. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I love chameleons.
The fastest chameleon in the world, supposedly. The fastest from what I was told. And that's the one that can eat up a couple hundred beetles a day. That's what they eat, and they race after the beetles, and they change color with the temperature, and get the warmth or reflect the rays of the sun. And fascinating. I loved watching the chameleon. That was one of my more interesting of the creatures. Also, the other one was the sidewinder, which people find fascinating. This snake, this viper, that's very camouflaged. I mean, you could walk right by him and not even see him. the eyes are at the top of the head, and you watch them move, and they're going, they're sidewinding, they're spiraling on their sides, and they're going up on these curves, up these steep dunes, and they try to keep their body off the sand as much as possible because then they don't overheat.
Yeah.
And he showed us that if they want to get the attention of prey, they remain really, really still, and then their little tail wiggles, and the prey thinks it's something to eat, and then moves, and then the sidewinder is really fast, and that's it. It's all over with. So.
Wow.
And then the cartwheeler. You were talking about the cartwheeling spider.
Yeah.
Was that one of your favorites?
Yeah, I just want to go back to the sidewinder because when you think about sidewinders out here in the Southwest deserts, we think of rattlesnakes. Do you think they're related? Because they kind of look similar, but I wonder if they are.
Well, they're venomous. I mean, it's a viper. It's a poisonous snake.
Yeah, the viper's a viper.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you saw the horned adder. That's cool. Man, adders freak me out a little bit. I've had too many run-ins. I've picked them up by accident. Dude, I know. This is one of my favorite topics, snakes. I love it.
I love snakes.
I know.
They're fascinating.
They are, because
they're beautiful.
Don't you want to just say, can we just have a conversation? Can't we just sit there? You kind of explain what's going on, not bite me, not raise up and do your thing, but can we just have this conversation?
Right.
No, but
no.
Some people may be able to, but the horned adder, because they really don't want to mess with you. Really, it's about or do you think?
Well, they don't. They really don't, and their hissing is what they're telling you to stay back, and they don't want to get involved with you, and so that's their way of communicating to you is don't get any closer. And our guide did tell us that their poison is fairly mild, but it still causes pain, and so he was very, very conscious to let us know, don't get too close, and it's obvious that the snake is giving you the warning, and you should heed the warning.
Yes. Yes. We agree on that. On that. But let's go to the spider. The cartwheeling spider. This kind of sounds to me. It's like the tumbleweeds we have. This is he haul down the dunes.
Yes, that's exactly. I mean, I love that analogy because it's good. It's like this spider doesn't spin a web. It basically does. It roams around searching for prey. But when it moves, it cartwheels, literally does cartwheels down, and they've clocked them at 44 turns per second. And it's amazing. I mean, and as I said in my story, they were Olympians, of the tiny creatures. I mean, they're crazy, and you watch them, and they're just oh my God! First of all, I'd get nauseous cartwheeling that many times in a second.
No,
but it's
I'd have
they
to stop
just
for
move.
wine in the desert. Excuse me, I'm not cartwheeling today. I need some wine. Then when it comes to the snakes, you also saw the shovel-snouted lizard, and this is. You got cartwheelers, and this one dances. This is pretty cool. They've got these characters that are all about survival, but it's I want to make a cartoon movie with them all because it should be a Disney
film. They're also
film.
fascinating, and they move so interesting and different, and it seems like there's such a well choreographed performance of some kind that they have, adapted over the years. But he's the shovel-snouted lizard is the dancing lizard, and it just kind of its feet go up, and they take turns alternating, and it's just it's amazing. And then when they sense any type of danger, they'll dive right into the sand with their shovel, their snout. And they basically, as our guide said, they swim where, it's being plunging in there and moving with their snout, and they can remain buried up to 24 hours, and they use the air that's trapped in the sand to breathe.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
This is so cool. This is David Attenborough stuff, man.
Yeah, it is.
And I know he went there too.
Yeah.
This is when you say this is the world's oldest desert. So and you took photos, people with those big trees, and those trees look pretty big actually. They may be skeletons, but they're darn big, and so a lot of people do go there because of this ancient place. Did you expect it to be a popular place or remote?
The dunes. Well, Namibian dunes. Every time you see photos in Namibia, the one that you a lot of times see are these incredibly huge dunes. Is like you mentioned that kind of orange red color, and they're striking, and the salt pan, the white, and the stark skeleton like trees, and so everybody goes to the dunes and the desert. I mean, you definitely when you go to Namibia want to go to those places, and they're very iconic images. And the dunes, they're incredibly wonderful. They're like the stuff of photographers' dreams, what I would say. But they're also like this kind of adventure playground for people. You can do all sorts of activities with these dunes in the desert. And to me, the one that is, I think, the best is to be able to climb the dune. Not only do you get the views, but another reason is you get a great workout, and then you get to boast about it afterwards.
I mean, just even when you walk, in the sand like in a desert wash, your butt feels it the next day. You're just you
tough.
just do.
Mm-hmm.
It's a workout for sure.
Yeah, it is. You take 2 steps forward and go back 1. It's like you're just kind of trudging, and when you're going uphill, it's even more so. But it's like, the reward is so great when you're at the top of a dune and you're looking at, at this whole desert scene, and it's just, I don't know, to me, it's one of those kind of must do things. Although if you have any issues with heights, it's probably something, there are people that don't want to be put in that kind of position, and that's fine.
Yeah.
You can admire that. You can admire them from wherever you are, but it certainly gives you a different perspective when you start to climb them.
So now, would Nancy wanted to slide down?
Yeah, get a piece of cardboard and then just fly on it and ski down.
You just fly. I mean, you fly down, just running down. I mean, it's like you take a long time to get up there, and then when you're up there, you're great. And then just to go down, you just start running down, and of course, gravity takes you down, and you're down like in a minute, and you're like, oh my God, it took me an hour to climb up there, or whatever, or longer, and then it takes you 2 minutes to fly down those dunes, and
cool. Wow.
People do all sorts of like I said, activities with the dunes, and there's like sandboarding or dune boarding.
Yeah.
You think of snowboarding, but this is with sand, and so you do dune boarding. People do other things like quad biking and all different kinds of things. I just think the low tech real version is to just walk up them.
Yeah. Well, this is like white sands in New Mexico, where people do the sandboarding, and they get into the gypsum sand, isn't it?
Yeah.
The gypsum
sparkly sand.
The white.
It looks like snow.
Yep,
This is so
absolutely.
fascinating to me. So geology-wise, like that is fascinating. And you were saying in your article that the orange color is like from iron, so it's like really iron-rich.
Iron oxide, the oxide. Yeah, exactly. Which gives it that color, and it's gorgeous. It's beautiful, and when you see it, and the sun, if you're up there early in the morning or later in the day, the shadows and the different sides, and it's to me it's breathtaking. It's such a unique landscape, and it's one of those things that a lot of people you never see unless you are in that type of environment.
When we were in South Africa, there was these, and it's getting up towards the border area, the Kalahari Desert and Namaqualand and all of that. And I've grown them here in this country, and it's not as easy. We did it when we were in Joshua Tree area. These stone
flowers,
plants. They're cactus that look like toes.
Yes.
Yeah, and so all of a sudden they'd bloom, and you're like, oh my gosh, it's there, and then it's gone, and that's it. That's over with. It's a good thing you were home that day. But it's really interesting when you get into desert plants. You look at the creosote, and out in the desert here, it's like one of the most ancient plants we have in this country. And when you get into these deserts, it's like, how do these things survive? And in South Africa, we had these melons, and if you open them up, it's quinine, and people the Bushmen would use the sand would open them up and use them for quinine against malaria, and we've tasted it. It's bitter as all heck, man. Yeah. Don't do it. But I remember when I didn't take my malaria pills, and there was an epidemic going on of malaria.
Oh.
And I was, little kid, promised Nancy I took my pills, and I'm all, Mommy, I'm scared. People are dying of malaria, and I'm like, I didn't take it. I'm like, I'm gonna go get one of those melons and chew on the melon. But that's just the thing. This melon doesn't look the same as the ones I'm talking about. It's kind of the melons I'm talking about look like the coyote melon we have in the desert Southwest. But this one is like cool, like all prickly and like wow.
It's the Nara bush, which is really famous there. It's because they say it is such a multi-use plant for animals and for people, who can, the animals eat it, the people boil the melon ball, they use the seeds, they eat them like nuts, they use the pulp, they make them into kind of like these flat cakes, and then, the melon ball itself they use to carry water if you're in the desert, or you can use it as a food source. I mean, the Kalahari Bushmen have used those kinds of things for years, and but it's fascinating because when you consider all the uses, and then you consider from a medical standpoint, what can be done, in terms of stomach aches and diseases, or helping you heal from a bad wound, or building up your immune system, or whatever it is. But they have so many uses, and obviously it's effective in this because they continue, they keep using him.
Very cool, man. This is so fascinating because and going again with a guide truly helps.
That's how you learn all these.
Yeah,
things.
you learn all these little things, and I geek out. I'm a nerd about it all. I get all excited, and I want to know every word.
Right.
I'll go back, to my hotel room. It's like, oh my gosh! And once you see it, like it's you understand the natural world in such a broader way, and you do find these connections, like what we're talking about, the desert Southwest.
Right.
And the connections that it has in South Africa and the Kalahari Desert. And
they're placeholders.
Yeah.
So there's similar species all around the world.
Yeah, exactly. Man,
right.
I want to go. I want to go. And by the way, I've had an ice cold Windhoek lager before. I've had quite a few of them. Don't tell Nancy, because I don't know if I was legal yet. But I've had quite a few of those. That's amazing that it's still there. Yay!
Oh yes, oh yes.
Oh,
they like their beer. Namibian beer, is quite well known, and it's very prolifically drunk. It's one of those beverages that that you see all over the place, and an ice cold one does taste good after you've been out in the hot desert, But
now you started in the coast to get to the dunes, right?
Yeah, we went kind of on an overland route. I mean, we started from Cape Town and went up, into Namibia, and we did, the Kalahari, we did the Delta, we did the dunes, we did Etosha, we did we extensively did Namibia, and then we went into Botswana and did Chobe and Chobe River and the Delta there, and then from there went into Zimbabwe and did Vic Falls from there. So it was an overland journey.
Okay, we're officially really jealous, right? I think our Love Your Parks tour, recognize that it can go national or international anytime it wants to.
Yes, I was going to say you can feel free, to go and do.
I know. We can go anywhere on this park tour, and we will, because it will happen. When you bring these stories in, Nancy and I are sitting there going, it's just, one plane ride over, to get over there. But I do want to touch on this because, the company that you went out with, they do birding, Batis Birding Safaris, and you were talking about these chat. So they're chat birds, like chats that we get out here, but they're
the tracks, and they kind of make those like little gurgles and chucks and this kind of weird, when you hear it, you're like, oh, that's a chat. That's a chat.
Come on, Fire Monkey. We're gonna have to call you Track next.
Well, there's chats a lot of places. I think there's different chats or whatever they are, but they're kind of a discordant sounding bird, but and they mate for life, and you see them in pairs, and they're small little birds, and
cool.
Yeah, it was
cool.
To me it was very. I wouldn't say I'm a birder. I say I'm a bird. I enjoy looking at birds, especially if somebody's going to take the time to tell me, the type of bird it is and a little bit about the bird. Otherwise, I'm just like, oh, it's just birds, But when you're in different places around the world, and there's birds that are only seen in those places, it's pretty cool, and special to see, those types of birds in their natural habitat. And you're like, oh, my gosh, this is probably one of the few places I'm able to see this particular creature,
Right.
Yeah. I like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing. And so, what time of year would you recommend people go? Since it's a desert,
Yeah, it's I think that the temperatures they're pretty much they're fairly consistent. I think I was there in October, and it's warm, hot at times, but it wasn't oppressively hot. The only time it gets very oppressively hot is when you're climbing a dune in the middle of the day. If you choose to do that, you start early so you can, get it as cool as possible, and then by midday it's going to be hot because there's no shade in that particular area. Namibia doesn't have a whole lot of shade, period. So it's a hot, dry, kind of dusty place. So I think it's pretty consistent, but it can get up to, I think they said 110 up there, but we didn't experience those temperatures. I know a lot of people who go different times of the year. The times that I've been to Africa, whether it's been East Africa or to South Africa or Southern Africa, it's been in the fall, and that seems to have been a nice time. It's also, I know in East Africa when we were there, it's also like the migration time, so you get to see the wildebeest going, across the Serengeti and, that whole thing. But, I think a lot of Africa is fairly consistent with temperatures. I think there's some areas, of course, there's rainy seasons and different times, but everyone says, there's every time they go, there's, if they go in a different season, they see something different. It's a different experience.
Yeah. I think with deserts, people get nervous. The desert, like here, I say like Tucson, Arizona, southern Arizona has 5 seasons. We have 2 summers. And the monsoon season, it's like one of the most magical times to come. The desert greens up. You see these incredible storms. And, I mean, it's epic. And you just stay indoors when it gets really hot. And it's a little wetter. It's moist and humid. And it is epic. You will see birds. I mean, it's a great birding season that people don't often talk about. If you want to go out watching birds, I'm telling you, you're going to see them here. And it is amazing. And the desert is interesting, and it gets cold in the winter. I mean, we had snow here, and you get snow up in Santa Fe.
Yeah.
We saw snow in the Kalahari Desert. When we went there. We didn't. It was warm in the day, and then we couldn't believe there was snow. We saw a lion walking through the snow, and I was like, dude, that's the craziest thing I've ever seen in my life.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah.
It's amazing.
Everything. Well, the desert, it definitely cools down as soon as the sun goes down. It cools down pretty quickly in places, So
it's just planning your experience correctly, and that's where companies do help. When people, the tour guide company, I used to think, oh, don't be like that, you're just being a baby kind of thing. Honestly, I used to kind of think, just go do your thing. You don't need to do stuff like that. And I've learned, that you're not going to get the knowledge or the experience, and you can do your own thing. You just have that. I think that's what, there's that thing of you can still go off and do your own thing, but
of course you
at
can.
least take that one guided trip so you get the knowledge, the lay of the land, and and visitor bureaus and, people like that really do help you know, hey, you have an intolerance to heat, don't come at this time. This is the time for you. So you can plan it accordingly.
Yeah, tour companies, tourism bureaus, CVBs, they are the experts in their own destination. And so, if you want to know something, when's the best time to come, or else when is the least crowded time to come, or when can I see the most wildflowers, or when are the lions most prolifically will show themselves, whatever it is. these people can tell you that, and not only that, they can really, steer you in different directions. And I'm never shy about asking for information and for direction and for guidance, especially from people who are locals and live somewhere, whether it's a good local restaurant that I would never find on my own, maybe because it's not in a guidebook or it's not, really advertised well or whatever, on the internet. It's just nice when somebody says, hey, if you're looking for something, looking for good whatever it is, here's a good place that locals really like. And I appreciate that. So I'm never shy about asking for information. And it doesn't mean that you're dependent on somebody or that you can't do something on your own. No, I think it makes you a better traveler, when you are able to open your mouth and ask for assistance,
Well, you'd get way more out of your trip.
Do you mean we pull over for directions too? Just saying. I just say that because I have to do that a lot because I won't use Google. I'm like, no. I do. I want to bring up your next conversation with us. Everybody stay tuned for that, and you can keep up with us on BigBlendRadio.com. You'll be seeing Debbie's next story is about Bagan, and I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, and that's up in Myanmar, right? That was your
it's Bagan, and you pronounced it perfectly. You pronounced it perfectly. Bagan, and it's Myanmar, which used to be formerly Burma.
Okay, awesome. Oh, awesome. So we look forward to that, and everybody stay tuned for that. You'll probably hear the interview in March, and again, you can keep up with us at BigBlendRadio.com. Debbie's story on Namibia is up on nationalparktraveling.com. Just type in Namibia, and you'll find it, or type in Debbie. You'll see her in our expert department under Parks and Travel magazine. And, of course, you can also see her stories in Big Blend Radio and TV magazine. Just go to blendradioandtv.com. I want to thank everyone for joining us, and thank you, Debbie, always bringing some great stories and great adventures. Really, you've been around. She gets around, Fire Monkey.
I have done a fair amount of traveling, but it's always fun to chat with you ladies because you also have been to many wonderful places around the world, and especially when it comes to Africa, it's nice to talk to people who have a sense of that destination.
I get homesick, and I'm just glad to hear about it. I'm just like, man, yes. It brings out the cobwebs and dust them out and go, remember this, remember that, and we'll be talking about Africa for the rest of the night now.
That's right.
That's going to be our conversation. Remember when, Now, speaking of Africa, of course, we're going to play some music from Africa. So
cool.
I know you got to meet James Saunders once on our show, real quick before we went live. And James Saunders, everyone, is from Cape Town, an incredible musician. And I encourage you to go to his website, JamesSaundersMusician.com, and that's SAUNDERS. JamesSaundersMusician.com, and I wanted to play this song because the video, and it just feels deserty. That's why, and it's
cool.
I want to play all this music, and the video is really cool. It reminds me a little bit of the Karoo and the windmill. The deserts have the little windmills for water and everything. So I wanted to play that, and you hear that little clink of the windmill in this song. So here it is, Wheel of Destiny.
Wonderful.
Thanks so much, Debbie. You take care.
All right, you too, ladies. Thank you.
Talk soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
You're sinking sweet and slow beneath the horizon. I see you disappearing in the haze. You're sliding in and out of this dream, never the same, never the same. What shooting stars may